What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with SPY, Nvda, Tesla, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. I'm going to break down what's happening with the earnings that just dropped, what's happening to the markets. We have some big volatility coming before we start to see some sharp approaching FOMC, and also how the market's going to likely respond to some big news that just came out. But before I break anything down about what's going on with the markets and some very important levels to watch for, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, in just about 6 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so looking at SPY, this thing is currently down about 0.2% as of right now. It's actually around this 454.5 support as of right now as well. And we actually saw this thing once again, breaking below the support at 455, and it's looking kind of weak in the pre-market. But what happened with all the earnings that dropped? So I just want to mention that before I talk about that, we have a little bit of data coming out, like new home sales and just things like that. I'm not expecting this to cause too much volatility. It's not even like that significant. And besides that, there's no major data until we have the interest rate hike decision coming out at 2 o'clock p.m. and then the FOMC reports. But we did have some earnings that came out early, and I just want to break those down first. So as far as the earnings go, I just want to mention that Alphabet did quite well. We actually saw, Google absolutely kill it. They did very, very well with steady demand. And they mentioned that their cloud services have some pretty strong looking guidance moving forward. However, Microsoft ended up dropping not because, they messed up. They actually did very well in earnings, right? The current earnings was a beat on EPS and revenue. We saw lots and lots of revenue for them. But the only issue that they saw was the fact that it's going to take them a little bit longer to really raise that revenue and those projections from AI. It's going to take them a little bit longer than expected, and that was not what clients wanted. Now, there are other reasons as well. I will talk a little bit more about that later. Coca-Cola currently is up about 1.7%, raising its annual revenue. Snap is down about 17.5%. There was weaker than expected guidance. AT&T is up, beating estimates. Wells Fargo up. What else is there? Amazon is actually down after just some news that came out. There's actually a lawsuit that just went down. And besides that, Deutsche Bank is also up. So most earnings are actually quite well. Just Microsoft didn't do that great, and that's part of why the market. Microsoft's guidance wasn't like the greatest. That's the only thing that was like a little bit bad for them. Besides that, I mean, almost everything was good for Microsoft in that earnings report. Moving forward, let me just mention that we have Meta reporting earnings later on today. And once again, going back to today, we have Jerome Powell speaking. Things are looking very, very good for Google so far. And last but not least, UPS is on the verge of closing a very important deal, but they ended up dropping after they announced a new contract. They're still a little bit down. And then we have Microsoft. The outlook just disappointed some investors. They had very, very strong earnings, like I said before, but like I said earlier, we can see right over here they offered a forecast for its AI and saying that it would have a bigger impact on revenue during the second half of the fiscal year that just started. So it's going to take a little bit longer, delayed impacts. So that's why the market's performing the way it is. And Tesla also has this recall right over here for about 1,300 cars. Now, anyways, going back to the news and how the market's responding to it, I want to just break down what's going to go down for today. We are looking quite weak in the pre-markets, and we're going to be watching this 454 support right over here to see how the market responds to it. We could see the market try to base very soon and just start trading sideways. We're already getting a pretty big reaction in the pre-market to all these earnings, especially from Microsoft. So expect the market to possibly drop a little bit more, then look for a nice bounce. Then expect lots of boring, choppy price action after that. So some volatility for the first hour, drop, bounce, and lots of sideways price action. And then we're just going to get stuck and very boring starting maybe 30 to 45 minutes after the market opens. It's just going to be very sideways, very, very boring until about 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, until the rate hike decision comes out. So I just want to warn you guys about that. Expect some volatility in the morning, but then expect a big slowdown. And this is going to perpetuate throughout the entire market. Now, with the recall for Tesla, Tesla may be especially weak now. It's testing 262, so look for a small bounce in the morning to retest 265 or so, but then it may continue to sell off because of this recall news. The news actually came out earlier, but it's making the headlines today. and it's still, once again, really, really pretty much out there. So looking at Tesla, we're going to be watching this carefully. It's going to start shopping around later on as well, then get a big reaction after the rate hike decision. For now, we're going to be watching this 262 support. If that breaks, watch 260. And then we have 257, I believe, below that, and then 255, 253 after that. For resistance, watch 265, 265.8, and then 268. And by the way, for SPY, I forgot to mention this. Resistance for SPY is going to be at 454.95. 454.5, and then 455, 456 above that. So watch those resistances very carefully. Supports at 454, 453.5, and etc. For a couple of other stocks out there, if you're looking at like Aapl, for Aapl, we're going to be watching this one carefully. If Aapl gets a nice push up, watch 194. That's going to be our resistance. If it breaks down, 193.5 and then 193 flat, 192.75, 192.5. Then we have 192 basically below that. So it's very, very tight right now. The resistance range is just super, super tight alongside support. In my opinion, it's just going to be very sideways, unfortunately. Not really seeing much for Aapl. For the triple Q, same thing. This thing is testing 377.6, 377.5, actually around there. If it breaks below this, it has the potential to come down right here to about 376.75. If that fails, let's watch 375.75, and then we have 375 below that. If we're bullish, you want to see 379 and 380 as our resistances. I don't really see it crashing too hard or running too hard. It looks a little bit more bearish, so I'm going to be looking to see how it tests this support. If that breaks, I'm going to be watching the 376 area, then see some sideways price action. It's just going to be very choppy and sideways after that, I would say. And then a big move after the rate hike decision comes, followed by Jerome Powell's speech. Last but not least, I'm just going to talk about Nvda and Meta. For Nvda, this thing has a really nice setup, in my opinion. Well, there are two ways to interpret it. It's going to be a little bit weak because of the market. It's going to be like a little sideways moving forward and get a big reaction to the FOMC meeting and etc. Right? But here's the thing: if we ignore the news, if we ignore the FOMC meeting, we just look at this on an unbiased basis, just based off technicals, it looks bullish. It looks very bullish to me. Without looking at all these external factors, it would be quite bullish, because when you zoom out on the 30-minute time frame, we have a nice inverse head and shoulder structure developing a cup and handle. It could retrace a little bit more just to form this like right shoulder, and then it's going to be off to about, potentially all the way up to about 480. It looks more bullish than bearish to me. My only concern about the video would be how it's impacted by the FOMC meeting. That could be a big factor if the whole market does get a rug pull or not. But if we just ignore that, if we don't worry about the FOMC meeting, if we just look at the chart, it looks very bullish to me. And the odds do favor it going all the way up to 480. But we have to wait and see what happens with the FOMC and what Jerome Powell says and all these different things first before we come to any conclusions. But it does look bullish. It looks like it has a nice uptrend developing, potentially even this nice cup that could be developing too. And I really love the structure. It's just that I'm always going to be well aware of the external factors affecting the stock. Finally, for Meta, as predicted, this thing is currently at about 300. We were expecting some upside. This has a nice setup too for a potential inverse head and shoulder structure with a price target of about 320. But just to be safe, I mean, it depends on earnings. It's going to likely try to outperform the market approaching its earnings. So we're going to be watching this 305 resistance right about here. And then we're going to be waiting to see what happens later on. We're going to wait to see what happens, how the Fed affects it. If the Fed does not cause that much downside for Meta, then it's going to make a massive move in either direction after earnings. If we get a big pump, this could pump the market, or at least help the market out a little bit tomorrow. If not, this thing could get a big rug pull. You never know, right? You can't just solely depend on technicals on a day like this. But from a technical standpoint, Meta is looking a little bit more bullish. Let me just note that. I'm going to be watching 305 for now, and then we will see what happens after earnings. It has earnings after the market closes. All right. So that's what I have for this video. I broke down some very important tickers. I want the best for everyone, and just get ready. It's going to be kind of boring for the first few hours. Maybe the first hour is a little fun with some volatility, but then after that, I'm expecting things to get very boring, very sideways and choppy. But then after that, once that's out of the way, things will improve big time and become a lot more fun. All right, thank you for listening. Have a good one, everyone. Get ready for the FOMC meeting. The next big thing coming out is going to be new home sales, which is not going to be not that important actually. I'm sorry. The next big thing is going to be the FOMC meeting, and we have the rate hike decision coming out at 2 p.m. All right, thank you for listening. Have a good one, everyone. Markets.